sing the down ceremony. It's a peace song that the Nisga'a people have. Down ceremony, down is spread, eagles down or swans down is spread throughout the land whenever we're doing any type of business. It's to show that we are here in peace. If the feathers or the down lands on your person, your body, or hair, leave it there. It's a blessing. So here we are today. Real quick. Go Gani. Thank you very much, everybody. That is our down ceremony. Al will explain before we go in. Explain the process of the down again.
Thank you. Welcome here today on behalf of South Vancouver Neighbourhood House. We welcome each and every one of you. Glad the weather's paying attention, that we're not all standing out in the rain, and that our feathers are able to blow. These feathers will eventually be cleaned up only by the gift of the Creator's breath, okay? Somebody might come along and sweep them, that'll be okay. As far as your clothes, do not clean it until you at least get home. With the feathers landing on you, we all realize that we all hope for blessings. These blessings are coming to us by the way that our own breath can reach one another, okay? We speak to one another, we reach each other with our ceremonies. So if you got feathers on you, you may not realize you needed a blessing, but guess what? You have a blessing going with you as we continue our ceremonies. What we're going to do now is we are going to go inside, and I am going to light the smudge bowl. When we smudge, what it is basically a cleansing, as the down feathers cleanse the grounds that we're about to go in. What I'll be doing is lighting the sage, and then I will be brushing. If you choose to accept, say thank you. If you choose not to, just hold your heart and say thank you, okay? That is the proper protocol. If you do accept, what I will do is I will blow the sage towards you. You will, with your own hand, wipe your hair, wipe your heart, wipe your legs and arms, and then I turn around and I do the same, but this time I will brush the feather, or brush the air, okay? So that'll be the smudging. It only takes roughly about 10-15 seconds per person. So if you choose to wait, we'll get everybody through and in. Then I will go inside, smudge the blanket, and smudge the room. Okay? We're all good? Alrighty. each and every one of us to have our hearts, our minds, and our ears and eyes wide open. What we learn today, we will take to others and share. It'll be appropriate to share because you were invited as a guest to witness what we are about to do. Miigwech.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge that the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House is located on the unceded and ancestral traditional occupied lands of the Coast Salish peoples. It always gets me. I'm so sorry for that. We are thankful to have the opportunity to learn, collaborate, grow, work, and build communities on the stolen territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We are grateful to the Indigenous people who have cared for these lands since time immemorial, and we hold our hands up to the amazing resistance, resilience, and strength in the face of historic, generational, and ongoing dispossession. As the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House and the entire nation works to honor and implement the 94 calls to the action that were made in 2015 from the Truth and Reconciliation Report, we recognize we have much to do. I'd like to call on Joseph to come and bless us. Joseph.
First of all, I got a shin shan that was given to us by all our ancestors. I remember this when I called my grandfathers, all the elders, and I got great respect from them because of that. So the song is, "In thee, O Lord, do we put our trust to thee. Yaitnin o min slach yok shvilon. Yaitnin o min slach yok shvilon. Yaitnin o min slach yok shvilon. We khadach yatum sum ogut. Lanin dem en kamguit wulp lulul mal amashatkun. Nin dem en amakikal khabih lul tal sum wulp tkuna. Nin dem en amakiati temula wildit temula kantier kanti khash matikal lul tlam. Wul nin git minum halamat kumtum kan wild. Tem wild.
At this point, I call on our House Elder, Elder Lorelei Hawkins.
Osio, wake, Hello, I'm so glad to see you today, and I'm so glad that you can join us and take this back out into our community and share this wisdom and this love. I'm so glad for today. My traditional name in English, in Cherokee it's about this long, is Ravenwing, and it's actually based on a story. My Boral name, slave name, is Lorelei Hawkins. I'm actually from my mother's side, from Alkali Lake, hereditary chief Joseph Carlson. My father's side, I'm from Henry Burris, who's Cherokee from Oklahoma. I give thanks again for all of my relatives and all of the learning that I've gotten from them. I give thanks to Inkanip for welcoming me back and bringing me back on the floor, for finding me and bringing me home. I also think of all of those who did not get to make that trip today. So with a bit of heaviness in my heart, I'm very careful what I do today. I'm so grateful that this house has taken this on and that we are working together to promote that we are here. We're not extinct. We are here, and we have a wonderful culture to share and so much wisdom and knowledge to share. And I hold my hands up to each and every one who works here for taking that on and understanding that and for learning and applying it in such a good way. Widow, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Travis Angus. My Nisga'a name is Nias Mew. Nias Mew translates as, Nias translates as grandfather, teacher, or master. Mew translates as of a slave. It wasn't that I own slaves or that I will own slaves. It's when I do things, people come out to help me. I don't have to ask for help. People just come forward, and that's where my name translates as the characters that I belong. Acknowledging the territories where we are on, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish, I'd like to sing their anthem, the Coast Salish anthem. The anthem was given permission by the George family of Tsleil-Waututh, the Burrard Reserve, the entire George family. The Coast Salish people had approached them and had requested to use one of their prayer songs as their anthem. So today, a lot of the Coast Salish people use this. And by being a visitor on this land myself, I am from the Nisga'a people, from the Nisga'a Treaty, or the Treaty people of the Nisga'a Nation. I've lived in Vancouver on and off about 30 years. I'm a single foster parent of three children. And I'm currently just started a position here at South Van as a family support worker. So I'm very happy to be in this house and happy to be home with all of these great people that I work with now. So I welcome you all, and everybody. Welcome.
Thank you, Travis and Elder Lorelei. Before we proceed with the ceremony, calling of the name, and raising of our community blanket, I wanted to first acknowledge the deep sadness that was felt by so many of us across Turtle Island when we heard the initial news that mass graves were being found on the grounds of residential schools. These discoveries have become the closest illustration yet of the oral stories that our First Nation elders, residential school survivors, and friends and families of these survivors have been telling us. It is truly awful and only proves what Indigenous people have been reporting about, the abuses inflicted upon them by the Government of Canada for decades. As we continue our journey of truth and reconciliation, we recognize it is important to make space for whatever our Indigenous neighbors, friends, and partners need to grieve, heal, remember, and honor their loved ones and ancestors. I ask you to open your hearts and minds as we look at these truths and try to understand the grief and pain that affects so many First Nations across Turtle Island. South Vancouver is a place where people of all ages, nationalities, religions, genders, sexual orientation, economic level, ability, and culture can get to know their neighbors in a safe, inclusive, and welcoming space. It's not just a gathering place, but we provide a variety of programs, resources, and services for children, families, youth, newcomers, job seekers, migrant workers, and older adults. My name is Shelley Jordy, and I'm the Director of Seniors Programs at SVNH. And I have had the honor of being chosen, I'm not sure why, of being the staff representative for our ceremony today. I'm a third-generation settler. My ancestors immigrated to Canada from Germany and Norway in the early 1900s. I was born in Ashcroft and raised in a very small town in the interior, Clinton, BC. I am privileged to live on the beautiful territories of the Kwantlen and Katzie Indigenous Nations of Canada. I want to thank our elders, Elder Al. I lost him. Thank you, Al, Elder Lorelei, and Travis. You've created opportunities for our staff and our community to learn in a deep, meaningful way that's impacted all of us. The story of the community blanket began with a discussion with staff on how we could continue our learning and collective efforts to decolonize and create a more inclusive, welcoming space for all of our neighbors in South Vancouver. And of course, there was a grant. Mimi wrote the grant. I'm not sure who the funder is. I probably should acknowledge them, but it's really, in this grand scheme of things, not that important. The process of creating the blanket was required staff to open their hearts and minds and embrace the knowledge that was shared with us. Travis took us on a journey of learning. He shared his vulnerability. He shared parts of him that I didn't know, parts of the culture that we were all not aware of. It took us many, many hours to bring our community blanket to fruition. I'm proud to share that almost every member of our team of over 80 staff were able to participate in the process, which began with a survey and ended with 6 workshops and hours of sewing. Travis? It's beautiful.
How many workshops?
6.
6?
There were 6. We did some in person. Yeah. Some in person, and the last couple, unfortunately, because of COVID, had to be done virtually. And even the virtual workshops were very meaningful. I know that staff have shared some of their stories about the blanket, but I wanted to share my story. My story came as a result of visiting my grandmother, Gram Blasky. She was 97 on Wednesday. And me sharing with my grandma the prayer that Elder Lorelei shared with us when we started on our journey towards truth and reconciliation. I'll say it now, but I'm also going to end the program with it. She's given us permission. Keep the circle ever growing. Keep the circle strong as we become family and as time moves on. This is what I brought and asked Travis, sent him in the mail because we couldn't do it in person. And it's a piece of lace that my grandmother made. And Travis just put it in a teardrop. I can't believe he knows me so well already. But in the center of this lace is a circle. And my grandma's very, very dear to me. I love her to bits. And she taught me about family. And we have a wonderful family here at SVNH. And I wanted my little piece of it to be a lasting legacy, not only to our SVNH family, but to my grandmother. So I wanted to share that and thank Travis, because some of us we weren't in person, so we weren't able to sew things on. There were other things that were sent to Travis, and he really worked hard to make sure that we all felt part of it. I asked Travis how many hours he put in, but I don't know that he told me. But you know, every stitch was a stitch with love and purpose and thoughtfulness. And the blankets and the blanketing training that we all received through those meetings, staff meetings, workshops, they're reflected in the energy of this blanket. I appreciate that there's not a lot of people that could join us today, and that some of them are live streaming, however that works. But Hector, a shout out, thank you very much. To the staff that actually made this possible, got the setup, that was a big process as well. And we want to thank Danvik, Paul, and Hector. The education and awareness that was gained from this experience will last with us forever. And our community blanket is a legacy for SVNH. And for that, we were truly grateful.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Again, welcome everybody. This is an extremely, extremely exciting time for myself, and I can't take all the credit for it because I've had two great women who have just stood beside me and pushed me. They even actually pushed me for this job. They made sure I had a job here. They made sure I had an office before I even had a job. So Huda and Mimi, thank you so much for everything that you guys do, and thank you for taking me along with you guys. I know your guys' journey is extremely busy, but I'm really grateful to be a part of that and to be a part of this community. I live not too far from here, so I actually live in the community. But it's beautiful to be in a place where we can call home. We've worked together with Vancouver Neighbourhood House, with the Greater Vancouver Native Cultural Two-Spirit Society, and we've established our home base here for our Two-Spirit community and LGBTQ out of South Vancouver. So that is a very exciting thing, and another protocol that we're going to go through once COVID opens up for us to break bread with all of the staff and community itself. Grateful to have Laura Lee by my side, standing with me with the blanket, and just being present and being in the moment, being consistent with everything that she teaches us. I'm very grateful to have you at my side today. The blanket, we started working on, it was before Huda was working here, before I started doing anything around here. We kind of started in and around looking at the concept of the blanket. I provided a workshop that we called, that I call the life cycle of a blanket, and it's right from birth to death of how we process our blankets within the Nisga'a culture, and the duties and responsibilities of our dad's side, of our Wilp Sayt-k'ilim side of the families that adhere to those. It actually shows the growth of a baby to toddler to infant, or infant to toddler, then to adolescent, then becoming a young adult. So the blanket process will grow and develop and evolve along with a person throughout their lifetime. But with the blanket process, it's the my dad's side of the family that comes forward to do all of the duties, to dress me, to wrap me in a blanket, to put a crest on my blanket, to basically to be there to show that ultimate support when it comes to anything that I do. So the blanket itself, we processed through and talked about the life I'd lived and the blankets I've achieved along the way. Not just the family blankets that I've had, but the blankets that came from organizations, came from graduations, came from me getting my children, new jobs, everything else. So it's the recognition of everything that I do in my life, my walk life, that I'm able to look at these blankets and tell you the story as to why that I've gotten them and who has gifted them to me. So it's one of the interesting things. We'll have to put it online one day, but it's a long process. Also with the blanket process, I talk about the village pre-contact before the governments moved in, before alcoholism moved in, the churches, everything else. So we talk about that, brought it in and around the residential schools. And I know it's a really, really heavy program that I run. But it's teaching. We are teaching people. We have to be able to teach in order for people to understand where we are and be able to appreciate the teachings that are around them and to be able to get a better understanding of what that looks like. So having to go through that process of the village and going through residential schools, we see and we hear everything about the children in the schools and the abuses that we have, but what we've neglected to see was the outcomes of our homes, our homelands, our villages. What our people went through as the children were being removed, what the people were going through when the 60s scoop moved in, the alcoholism moved in, what our people were continuously going through, and then finding after years the generational traumas, the fractures of all of our homes, our communities, and now to rebuilding and taking back. So it's grateful to be here. I mean, to be able to develop a community blanket with, I know I sat with Huda a long time, and we planned and Mimi is just so, she's just like a butterfly. She's so excited about everything, which makes me happy and makes me feel so energized to be here. I did come together with all of the staff from SV Nation. It's a huge staff here. I couldn't believe how many people you guys have just in this tiny little office. I mean, believe it or not, there's like 6 people in a 2-person office. So I'm lucky to have an office by myself, tucked away way upstairs on the 3rd floor. I don't know how long that'll last. I mean, I'll probably set up a desk outside the front just because I like to be seen. But I'm grateful to be here. Like I said, we worked with the staff on this. We worked with Huda and getting the idea and everything across. And then once Mimi, myself, and Huda had looked at developing the idea, they brought it to the staff to see what we can do with that. So during that time, I sent a survey out to see what the staff would consider South Van to be. My first goal was to, and I still need to hear this from these ladies, is what is your story? What is the story of South Van? And this is something we ask wherever we go, anywhere we go, and anywhere we work at. What is your story? My story is I came here, I'm a foster parent. I work many different community fields. I lived on the homelands of the Nisga'a people from a village in Gingolich. My parents are Marjorie and Larry Angus, and my grandparents, Ernest and Maggie Angus, and Sarah and Graham Moore. So going back in those histories and telling your stories is very important, because once we started doing our programming, we started to add that into the programming. We started to add how to introduce ourselves, to acknowledge your lineage, to acknowledge your background, to acknowledge where you come from, because it's a gift that you offer us as we offer you that gift. And it's being able to teach each other more about who we are, so that we can be able to, I mean, we're going to always be friends, but it's good to know when somebody is having difficult times. We walk into a place where there's many, many people, but there's no reason why we should walk by somebody who is in crisis, who is in trauma, who is grieving or mourning or anything like that. We should be able to pick up on those easily. So working with the, sending the surveys out, I got all of the surveys back and trying to figure out what everybody thought that the South Van community was. One was transient. We found that a lot of families or people were transient in this area, which was really interesting because I felt it to be, because rent for one is lower in this area, I think, for apartments or for rents and stuff like that. But the other one was residential, extremely residential, and generations of families that live in this area. So a lot of people that live in South Van, there's so many generations that have grown their families through South Van, that having this community, there's a lot of history behind South Vancouver. So with having the blanket, we not only brought the staff together, but we had them come in with articles they wanted to have onto the blanket to represent themselves and family. So we had buttons, we had some beautiful buttons that were brought in. These pieces here, you would see in the ovoids, different colors, is from a sari. And when the sari came in, I think it was a lenga or a sari. Anyways, when it came in, we wanted to add it incorporate it into the blanket, but I thought it was a good idea because everybody was putting their own button work on it, every program that I had, so they would add all of their own button work, the shells, these beautiful buttons here, the lace. We've got a feather up there. I don't want to tilt my head too hard, I got a headache. And it was beautiful because there was a story behind every stitch that everybody came to. We sat in places where people would talk about, my family used to do things like this, or, I come from a line of sewers, and some of them would apologize because they know nothing about sewing, but their family all did. So it was beautiful. It was a really beautiful combined effort of the staff to come forward. I want to read some of the stories, and there's such small print. I don't know who's expecting me to read because I'm too old and I can't see. Anyway, this is, it doesn't say name. So I'll try to read a couple of these just to give you an idea of the people that were working on the blankets. It's very beautiful to have that. So, oh my gosh. As an immigrant, I've always admitted the totem house poles and the stories they tell. When an opportunity presented itself to be a part of the story being told through the SVNH community blanket, I felt a sense of joy and pride that it is indescribable. The buttons I added were meant to represent my husband, my children, my grandchildren, but I stitched them on the blanket. The pattern started to take its own shape. When I finished, I noticed that it looked like the rising sun emerging from the ends of the blanket. This is how the immigration has been for us, gradually rising to find our place and shed a light on the land that we call home. This was from Hudo, isn't it? Thank you very much. I remember the rising sun, so that was very beautiful. And that one is right here. Beautiful job. You used the red threading on there to bring the sun rays out, and it turned out absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much, Huda, for that and for adding that part into the family and giving it the story that we need to build on. Oh my gosh. I'll share one more. This one is from Bella Gardens, I think. Minyan, whatever. Anyway, we are Bella Gardens, ADP, where our contribution to the blankets with the recreation staff and the clients on that day with all the blankets we sewed buttons on. Those who were independent and able to put multiple buttons on input a pattern that they would like. Clients who were less able to assist by recreation staff to sew buttons on in a way that the clients liked. Lots of collaboration and involvement which brought out a different way of togetherness. Not only did we have many clients and staff in different blanket backgrounds, with different backgrounds, we are lucky enough to have an Indigenous client of Anishka to be able to share and teach everyone. Along with the many clients there, we also had a client whose former occupation was an advanced professional seamster. From this opportunity, said client was able to also teach clients and staff his skill set and how from there. We had another collaborated opportunity from Bella ADP team and clients. We were able to gratefully to learn a part of the blanket making. And that was the Bella Gardens ADP team for South. I think that was the adult day program. Thank you very much for just for sharing your stories, and I know that we'll have all of your stories put up onto our website, and then be continuously part of the blanket program from there. We continued on with different sessions, and I think there was probably 10 sessions, not 6. It felt like more. I mean, I got to a point where I was so excited about doing these sessions and being able to talk and to go into a session for 2 hours, because we're in the middle of COVID and having to be a single parent at home with 3 children and no adults to talk to was so impressive for me to come out, and I swear all I did was talk straight for 2 hours. So I did get my fill of it for everybody to listen to me, and it was amazing. But getting back to the blanket, we looked at the, on the other side, we can't see it right now, but when you get a chance, take a look at both sides of the blanket. The version on the black side here is the male version of the blanket, and it's to represent the male and the female. So we wanted to incorporate both, all of the sexes. So on the other side is red, represents the female. And then on this side here, because of the some areas that where we had the see, in the reverse side of the blanket is all red, and you will see that you'll have the moon, the sun on this side, and again, a lot of the workmanship by all of the people that came out to help. So representing both the red and the black side of the blanket, and telling the stories of South Van. We wanted to encompass pretty much every story, because we found that South Van was very a very residential area. There was some transiencies, but it was just, when it came down to it, it was, what did we feel of South Van? Where was our most power? The most power, the element that we seen that came to us was water. Water was one of the elements and the strongest power that we see and came to from this area. We also looked at the calmness, the tranquility of the people that are around the area here, and how quiet South Van actually gets after 9 o'clock. It's really quiet. So, yeah, if you're living in South Van, it gets super quiet here. So we brought the moon in to represent on the male side of everything, because it's literally, I can honestly tell you that the men around here are so quiet and so calm. I'm not that the women are loud and noisy, but I'm just, it's just an observation that I have. There's so much different backgrounds and generations, so there's so much respect in everything that they do. People walk with dignity in this area. And then for South Van, having the opportunity and to be able to put that into a blanket, being able to offer not only the Indo-Canadian artifacts, we're looking at the Filipino, I can't remember, it's Filipino and Asian for, then you've got the buttons for Asia, then you've got the beautiful lace from Grandma. And then it's just the button work and everything, the way that everybody had planted everything. There was moons, stars, there was flowers. So just the putting it in there and having the stories built from our community and our workers itself was absolutely amazing. And I had a really good opportunity in getting to know everybody. And working again along with Huda and Mimi they are key to this organization. And I swear to God that if you need to find funding for anything, you go to them. Anyways, I don't want to take too much time. I'll bring it back to Shelley, and then we'll follow through on protocol. Shelley, thank you.
Well, you got me thinking, what is our story? We're still writing our story. Our story began in 1977, and we're a part of the Association of Neighbourhood Houses of BC. Our CEO is here today. Thank you for joining us, Liz. As is our MLA, George Chow. Thank you very much for joining us. I think our story is different depending on how you're connected to our house. But what binds us is the sense of community, the sense of a willingness to support those that have more vulnerabilities than yourself, to find a place that you can call home, a home away from home, and that you're all welcome. And I really felt welcomed when I came to the neighborhood house. I'm one of the few white settlers that work at the house, and I find it a real honor and privilege. And I'm doing that work. I'm working hard, as are all of us, towards our truth and reconciliation. But you know, I'm one of the few that only speaks English. It's not so good for me, but thankfully, most of our staff speak many of the languages, all of the languages most commonly spoken in South Vancouver, and many languages that very few folks speak in the surrounding neighborhoods. So it's a real privilege again to be the House representative, and that all of you are here to witness our ceremony and join us on our journey as we continue to write our story. Over to you, Travis.
Thank you very much. Before I turn it over to Al to call our elders forward, unfortunately there was a couple of elders that we had called forward to come today that weren't able to make it. There was the family emergency, so we put our hands up to them in prayer and asked for guidance and comfort for them, their families. The blanket is the name of the blanket is Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. It's House United. That means everybody that belongs to this house is united to this house. So it's a house that opens the doors for everybody. Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. So I'll ask Al to come forward, and then what we do is get the elders to call the name. I'll have, in representation of the our Two-Spirit Chief, come forward instead of one of the elders that aren't here, in place of one of the elders, if we can do that. Okay. Oh, Al.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Been there. Good afternoon again. Aren't we having a good time yet? Are we learning? We are. That's a good point, because every day we should be learning. When we open our ears to strangers, we always learn something. Did you know yesterday on the bus, I was talking with this lady. She seemed very upset, and I asked her, "Do you mind if I asked what's wrong?" And she goes, "Nobody thought to ask, but my husband's not doing very well and I'm on my way to go and visit him." And I says, "Oh no, what's wrong?" And she said, "It's kind of private." I says, "That's all I needed to know. So I'll lift your husband up in prayer." So that's what we do. By learning that, she felt an ease come upon her. And by sharing with one another, as we do, we can make that much difference in the world, because we don't know what each other's day is like. We could be smiling and be in so much pain behind that smile. So before we continue, it is my custom, okay, that if you don't know the person beside you, or even if you do, okay, I always say it helps by saying hello to your neighbor. Say hello to your neighbor. Give them a handshake. Say hello. Give them a hug if you so choose. And when we do this, what we are doing when we give a hug is we are opening our worlds to them to say welcome. And just like South Van Neighbourhood House is doing, they're opening their doors to say welcome. And that's what we feel is that welcome. So thank you, South Van Neighbourhood House. Before we continue and call the elders, I am actually going to take the opportunity to just read a couple of more stories, if I may. They're very quick. Okay, this one's coming from Wayne Yerksa. My ancestors were from the Netherlands and settled in North America in the 1600s. I was born and raised on the west side of Vancouver on the unceded ancestral, traditional, and occupied homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Some of my classmates from secondary school were from the Musqueam nations. We were taught Canadian history, but none of it mentioned the Canadian government's assimilation policies towards Indigenous people. It was later, while taking Native Study course at the college, that I learned about this shameful history. Prior to working on the blanket, Niasmew, Travis Angus, shared with our group many of his own blankets and the story of the meaning behind each. He also chronicled some of the history of Indigenous peoples from first contact with European settlers onward and the atrocities that they faced at the hands of the Canadian government, including the taking of their lands, enactment of the Indian Act, prohibition from speaking their own language and practicing their cultures, traditions in residential schools and the scoops of the mid-1950s to 1980s. My contribution to the blanket was sewing buttons and on it and assisting some of our elderly participants in their work on the blanket, engaging them in conversation. We shared some life stories, one about how it is an honor to raise children and the wisdom they possess and can communicate to their parents if they are willing to listen is astounding. I was honored to be included in contributing to the blanket. I felt it was a collective venture with each of us sharing our individual experience through creative expression and discussion. I felt like I was with my extended family, all of us uniting together in a common project, preparation for family celebration in case everyone was excited to know that this blanket would find a home and place to be proudly displayed at South Vancouver Neighbourhood House. I feel there's a good sense of community and inclusion at South Van Neighbourhood House in the people who work and volunteer together in providing a multitude of services to the diverse population in our community. Thank you so much, Wayne. So I will continue. As Travis mentioned, we all should be introducing ourselves. I should have done that first, but I'm one of those men that can talk more than a woman, so you women have nothing to fear. I originally come from Manitoba. I settled here in Vancouver in the early 1990s. I have a brother that's lived here since 1970. Our home was broken up through the residential schools. My mother was a survivor of the residential school system. And in the early 60s, all of her children, including myself, were taken away from her on the premise that she was to go and heal. What happened was she agreed and went for her healing in her programs that they had set her up with, and each of the kids were placed in foster homes. Her request was that we be placed two together so that we could help each other find each other's home. Well, in doing so, after her program was complete, she had asked for her children, and they had told her, "Your children are very happy. Please don't disturb them." Meanwhile, when we had asked, "Hey, we should be going home by now," we were told as children, "Your mother has chosen the alcoholic road and don't want you back." So we all felt devastated. I was hit by a car when I was 14 years old. My mother found me by reading about the accident in the newspaper, and that's how I was reunited with my mother. When she sat on my bed at the hospital bed, she didn't even have to open her mouth. I says, "I know who you are." She says, "How do you know?" I says, "Because I've waited for this day all my life to see you again." And she started crying, and she goes, "You remember?" I says, "I'll never forget the tears in your eyes when we were being taken away." And that's, with the residential schools, okay, before we continue, I am going to ask if we can just take a moment's silence to remember all those little children that they're still finding in graves today. and there's going to be many more. So if we can just take a moment's silence and lift their families up, that their closure is near and they can have that moment of peace, knowing that their loved ones have been found. In my own tongue, Kichimigwech, which means many thanks. Now let's move on, and we would like to call our elders up. This gentleman I've known for a number of years, and I was so proud to be able to call him by his name when he taught it to me. I've always known him as Elder Joe Calder, whereas at one of the weddings that they asked me to MC, we were taught his name, Estum Laha. Did I get it right? Yeah, he said I got it right. He said I got it right. Samagat Estum Laha. And yes, Travis will go and get the chief.
The blanket that I'm gonna call, in our language, we call it Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. It means that we have all the people that are in the blanket, and it's covered all together, that no one is out of the blanket. And the blanket represented all nation. We had that long time ago, way before the Europeans came. And that's the reason why we have that. I remembered when all my elders spoke about it and talked about it, and all the other nations used to come together. We were never parted away from other nations until the Europeans came, and that would really wrecked everything in all nations, because they lie to the native people, and that's the reason why we have blankets, to show the recognitions of being together. And ever since then, we've been together. We share the things together. And that's the reason why we call the blankets Wilp Sayt-k'ilim. That means we're together. Thank you.
Today we blanket Uncle Joe, Elder, for calling the name of the blanket and an honorarium from South Vancouver. Thank you, Uncle Joe. Samagat Stutkum Laha. Right.
Yeah, I was given the name from my uncle, Uncle Bert, and he was down here for a while, and I looked after him too. So he gave it to me because of taking care of him. The name that was supposed to be given to my brother, but my uncle told me, if you care for your brother, you can always give it to him if you don't want it. So I came up to my brother and I told him, I said, you're gonna have to take that name. You're older than me. But as the years went by, I was taking care of my uncle. My brother passed away. So I'm the only one that left. And so I had to take it. But other wolf tribe tried to take the name, but they couldn't take it because there was one elderly lady, Hester McKay, spoke up and told the people, this man is from Gitchatain. He has to take that name. And that's the reason why I'm called Stutkum Lacha. It's highly recommended name. It's the Ayan's people that every time they see me on the street, on the road, and they call me Ui Simagit Stutkum Lacha. Some of them, they just bow with me. But other in my own village, there's quite a few young people in there. They never really, they just called me Joe. They never called me my real name. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. And today, they took my house away, which the house that belongs into the name of Stutkum Lacha, and they didn't know that. All the young people that came from residential school. I was in residential school too. But I was so eager, willing to learn. But when they knew I was eager and willing to learn, they make me look after the chicken, pigs, cows, horses, and they even make me plow the field and look after the teachers' houses. Almost like a janitor. And when I go back into the classroom, the teacher says, I cannot tutor you. Look how many papers I've got to look after. You have to stand. You have to sit way in the back. So there's one old man that looked after the furnace. He gave me a few books, Dick and Jane, and he read it to me, but he never make me spell those names. He just told me what the names were. And ever since then, I kept trying to go back to school, but they didn't. So when I go back to my home, they said I was in grade 1. I wasn't even in grade 1. So ever since then, I've been out of school doing more like janitor's work, and I didn't even get paid for that. I got paid for not going back to school. But in my own language and my own cultural way, I have learned a lot from all the elders. And ever since then, when I speak, people think that I was highly graded person. And I told them, I said I didn't go to school. But they were so surprised of how much I know. I've learned all the cultural way. We were the first ones in a cultural way marching through Granville Bridge, starting from the library. That's where we paraded and all the way down. And I got some DVDs when we first started marching through the street. You should have seen so surprising of what the people done when we were singing. Our dancers were putting their hands up, and while I was getting tired of drumming, then I looked on the side of the street. You should have seen all the people put their hands up in the air and dancing too. It lifted my heart up so highly, and I got my strength right back. I started drumming so hard. I was so happy to see the people rejoicing. And I never forget that. And I kept that DVD. And I'm always proud of it, even though I didn't go to school. I've learned my own cultural way. And it's still the same as going to school, because my grandfather, I call all my elders grandfather. My grandfather taught me, they never teach me the dirty ways. They teach me the correct ways all the time. And when I see people like what he said, he learned from other people that are on the street and talk to them. We're taking a lot of people off the street when they've been drinking. First, I was giving them money, but one elderly man told me, he said, "Don't give them no money, feed them." So that's what we did. We take them to any one of the places, and we make sure that they eat. And so we took quite a few of them out, and they teach them how to sing, how to drum, and that's the way they are. Today, they're still drumming, and I'm happy about it, and I'm thankful for each and every one of you. I'm in with you people that are here. When you're drumming out there, I'm there too, because you're all in my mind. You're not alone. I'm there for you. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, and our next elder is Joe's beautiful wife. Esther Calder is what the government knows her as, whereas her name is, oh,
Esther, Auntie Esther.
oh, okay. We'll call her Auntie Esther.
We Sayt-k'ilim God.
We Sayt-k'ilim God.
Put your hand up here. You call it 3 times. Put your hand on the blanket and you call it 3 times. We Sayt-k'ilim God. We Sayt-k'ilim God. Put your hand on the blanket and you hold it in the name. We Sayt-k'ilim God. 3 times. We Sayt-k'ilim God. We Sayt-k'ilim God. Good, thank you. Good, thank you. Just right here. You call forward your two-spirit chief. And then just recognize his position. Thank you. Yeah. Lower you first.
And we'd like to welcome our house elder, Lorelei Hawkins, please.
Blanket. We Sayt-k'ilim God. You have to holler it. Yeah, 3 times. Just wait here. Thank you. It's tall. Beautiful.
In my language from down south, ayo means like all of the people. So
Very
welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, next one, your two-spirit.
And as one of our elders could not make it, and we're glad that one of our two-spirit elders came in. Actually, he's not a two-spirit elder yet. Oh, well, wait a sec, he is. In our two-spirit society, we have representatives known as our two-spirit chief and two-spirit princess. I have myself had the privilege of being both. Yay. The fun part about it is when they knew me as chief, they called me Silver Coyote, whereas when they knew me as a princess, I was called the Silver Cougar. My chief was a lot younger. That's the only reason why. But we're privileged to have our current chief. He's actually been in service and in the position for 2 years because of COVID. He decided to hang out in the second year and say, I will still be there for you. So please make him feel privileged. And I'll let him explain his names, but we know him as Greg.
Hand on the blanket. Take your mask off. And then holler. We Sayt-k'ilim God.
We Sayt-k'ilim God.
3 times.
We Sayt-k'ilim God. We Sayt-k'ilim God. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here, and always a pleasure to be working with Travis and Al on community events and everything like that. Yes, my name is Greg. My cowboy name is Greg McNeil. My Nishka name is Wit-ash-kek-kun, which means eagle sitting on a branch, given to me by my grandmother. And in the Greater Vancouver Native Cultural Society, my name is Legacy Chief Lava Rain. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you, everyone, for attending and joining us here today in this wonderful ceremony, blanket ceremony. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. And you can pass it over to Shelley.
Okay, so before we go on, I am going to read one more short one, and then we're going to pass it over to Shelley. This one comes from Supreet Kaur. Hello everyone, I am Supreet Kaur. I learned more about Indigenous people and their history while studying at Alder University. I wanted to add a piece of cloth to the blanket. I have read somewhere blanket exercise is a tool to understand the previous life of Indigenous communities, like how they lived in Canada, how Europeans acquired their lands, waters, and finished their cultures and languages. Therefore, I would like to participate in the blanket exercise to understand better what happened with the Indigenous communities in the past. At South Vancouver Neighbourhood House, all staff and volunteers are doing so much as possible to serve the best for the communities in South Vancouver. To see South Vancouver Neighbourhood House providing community service makes me happy and has increased my self-confidence. Thank you. Now, back to Shelley.
I was really nervous about this part of the protocol. They told me not to be nervous, so that is one thing I just wanted to highlight, is that we've had wonderful elders mentoring us as we're on this learning journey, and we've stumbled. I don't think we've fallen, but we've stumbled a few times, and they've let us learn. They've opened their hearts to us and let us make mistakes and pick ourselves up. So on that note, I have the honor of blanketing Elder Al Houston. I did a lot of research. I was worried about if I would do it right, and they said just put it around. But if I understand from what I did, I'm to put it over your left shoulder like this.
Yes.
And tuck it in. I can't hug you because of COVID. That would be one of my protocols. But
We'll do it air hug. Thank you very much. You all know who I am. I'm not going to waste too much more time, as there's lots yet to go with. Thank you very much.
and now I have the honor of blanketing Travis. Travis.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hug her anyway because I work with her.
And we have two more pieces of our protocol, and it's my honor to call on our member of the Legislative Assembly, our MLA, George Chow. I have the honor of blanketing MLA Chow, and then we'll let him say a few words.
Well, what a day. I was here from the beginning with the blessing of El, the sage, and also now I'm very, very fortunate to be blessed with the blanket. And I want to congratulate the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House, and particularly Trevor and Shelley. You have led this blanket making session for, 10 sessions? Yeah. But I also like to first acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people, with whom we share this land and their hospitality. And definitely I'm a settler who've been to Vancouver for over half a century, but that's really nothing. That just shows how old I am. So I'm very, very impressed with the blanket. I think it's fantastic, particularly in this courtyard. The architecture and you know, the facade in the back is great. And when I think Shelley first talked about the circle, I said, oh, my interpretation, it was a moon, like a full moon. But I think, Trevor, you got to it. Some people look at it as a rising sun, and then you can see it as a full moon. And on that score, if you follow the Lunar New Year, in 2 days, it will be the Lunar New Year that are celebrated, you know, in a lot of the parts of the world. And I'm also familiar, and I don't know when exactly, the Nishkar New Year is right around the same time. So, it's a celebration of people after the harvest. So this is very, very important. And I know, Shelley, you were very emotional when you talk about the residential schools. Now, you know, let's talk a bit about South Vancouver. South Vancouver has a lot of history, even before colonization. After colonization, I mean, I went to an event in the River District, and the indigenous woman was telling how they actually travel up the river in the wintertime and actually settle in the area where the River District is. And I think, so we really need to record that history. And I think, Elder Joe, you talk about your, you know, treatment in the residential school. Now, it's really a tragic history. You talk about that you were willing to learn, but they put you to work, but they never educate you, right? And I think it's to your credit that you learn on your own and about your culture and be able to pass on to what you have learned. So I think certainly that's very important. And I think as a member of the government, our BCNDP government, we are very proud that we have, you know, enshrined the United Nations Declaration of Rights of the Indigenous People in 2019. And of course, the news last Tuesday was not great from Williams Lake about the residential school. And I think ever since May last year, with the residential school discovery in Kamloops, I think the whole nation, the whole province is waking up to this history. Because when I came to Vancouver in 1965, I lived in Chinatown, right in the heart of downtown East Side. And I see a lot of indigenous people, but I really don't know anything about it. And certainly not about the residential school. So that's all we know. And I think it's only in the last decade that we learn about this dark chapter of Canadian history. So I think we will definitely need to do more. And I think, as one of the chiefs said, you know, reconciliation is hard work. It's not for the faint-hearted. So I think, even though this is a very auspicious day, you know, Lunar New Year, Nishka New Year, but I think there's still some hard work in front of us. And I'm very happy that the South Vancouver Neighbourhood House took up this important blanket history and be able to talk to the people who actually had some history to share. So I'm very happy to be here, and this is a great blanket. It's at the right location, and architecturally it's fantastic, and I like that. And thank you to Travis, Elder Hawkins from the shoe shops in the Kelowna area, and of course Hooter, who's the CEO of the South Van. And no, you're not? Oh, wow. Anyway, you're from the South Van Neighborhood House, and Shelley and you know, Joe and and to Esther as well. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored, and I think we'll start our journey with this raising of the blanket. Thank you. Yeah.
Liz, it's your turn. I'm calling on our CEO of the Association of Neighborhood Houses of BC. I will blanket her and we'll have her say a few words.
I'll take this off. Thanks. I'm Liz, as Shelley said, and I'm actually a first-generation settler, being a newcomer to Canada. And given Travis's encouragement around telling our story earlier, it really made me think about looking back for myself and some of my own journey and how important that is to where we are as an organization today. So, I came here in the 1990s, married this fabulous Canadian man, and thought that I'd come to a country where people were just beautiful and warm, and I had. But all around me at that time, I also saw things that were happening. I was living very close to the Oka crisis at that time. Things that were happening that didn't really make sense for me. And there was a lot of personal confusion about, what I believed. I knew nothing. I had never been introduced to the real history of Canada. And so I was trying to piece things together. And I eventually went back to school and studying in the social justice arena, and things started to fall into place. And the rest of my life has been, learning every single day. But there's also been a lot of unfolding of what my personal role has been all the way along, and questioning about whether I do enough in my life. And so why this is important is when Mimi and I talked about me being blanketed today, I had to question whether I was the appropriate person, because for a couple of reasons. One is that the significance of this ceremony is not lost on me at all. But the other thing is, and this is sort of where we landed, that actually it was important because it's about representation, the representation of this organization that has such beautiful people doing amazing work every single day. And that work is committed, values-driven, passionate, and continues. People come every single day to do this work, despite the challenges that they face. And recently, as we all know, those challenges have been significant, and they still come every single day and serve this community. So, I feel humbled, but I also feel so proud. We're an organization that is almost 130 years old, and so if you think about that, and what has happened in those 130 years, I think, are at a place through our evolution where we recognize the importance of listening. You talked about listening, you talked about learning, and acting as allies in it to our community members. But there's more. Like, as we learn more and more about our organization and our history, and our complicitness in the oppression of various different marginalized communities, including Indigenous people, we get stronger. We get more resolve to change. And what has been remarkable for me in the time that I've had the privilege of leading this organization is that resolve just builds from strength to strength, and people are working very, very hard to demonstrate their commitments as across the organization to social justice, equity, inclusion, and their commitment to truth and reconciliation and decolonization. And today's ceremony is so critically important to that, because it's not just about making those commitments, it's about demonstrating them, putting them in action every single day, working alongside collaboratively with each other on what that looks like, so we recreate the communities that we want to live in and be part of. So I'm thrilled to be here. Today has been so heartwarming, very emotional, and I'm so grateful on behalf of everybody, if you'll all allow me to say that. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to, I want to call Mimi and Huda forward because you've been so instrumental in today and the planning, the stages, everything, and making this happen. But I have a little gift for both of you, if you can come forward. One's for you. Come forward. That one's for you. It's just so that you'll always remember today and remember the work that you put forward and the work that we have going forward with South Van. I know it's ongoing and the appreciation is always there. Shelley's and Shelley. But I would like to hear from you guys. Put you on a spot and give you the mic, starting with Mimi. Thanks, Mimi.
Oh my gosh!
Sure. You know what? I'm going to try to take off my mask. So it's going to take me almost half an hour. So just give me a moment. Maybe I'll let Huda. Go ahead. Okay, here we go.
Is this why I was speaking earlier?
Thank you.
You want to hold this? It'll give you a little strength.
Oh, that's fantastic. At the top? So, my name is Mimi, and one thing I've learned through Travis and Elle is to talk about my heritage, because it's about where I'm from, and it talks about my history and my ancestry, which really talks about us introducing one another. And one thing that really resonates in my mind is when Elle and Travis always mention the whole purpose of naming your history is because it's like there's other people in the room that perhaps you're related to, and they know who you are as well. So it's been fantastic to learn that. So again, my name is Mimi Rennie, and my ancestry is mainly Chinese descent. However, through a lot of research, I also have a lot of Asian background from varieties of different ancestry, like Vietnamese, Filipino, and Malay. So hence the reason why I'm wearing this. So with that said, I just want to share my story in the sense that when I came here to do the blanket, it was really instrumental in terms of my learning. For one, I was so excited so excited to learn how to do just the presence of the blanket, and because Huda always shares all these fantastic things about what the blanket is. But without even reading this, what I found with the blanket, it gave me context to how important your life is and the stories that happen in your life. And when Travis went through each blanket of his life, it made me reflect on my life. And that regardless of good, bad, ugly, best, whatever it is, it's a journey that I carry with me and I've learned. And interestingly enough, I found that after I came home from the blanket event, I wanted to dig up things about my life. And I thought, oh my God, I wonder about my kids' blankets. You know, I stored them far away, and I just didn't even think about that. But what I loved about the blanket ceremony was that it taught me to look at me, and it taught me to look at the people around me and how authentic and beautiful every person is. So a big thank you. And I do want to also say to Elder Lorelei, she's been instrumental to our house because she has continued with her heartfelt to say, I'm showing up so you can learn. I'm showing up so you can be true to where we're going in this house and in ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Travis and Al. Thank you. This is so very special. So very special. I just want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish nations. And I moved here, as Al had read the story. I immigrated here with my husband and children in 2012, and I really did have this yearning to really learn more about the indigenous community because our house was very close to the Musqueam Reserve. And I would go there and look around and wanted to learn, but I didn't get a chance to do that. And then when I joined South Vancouver Neighbourhood House in 2017, there were these programs that were held by Geraldine, who was the Aboriginal family support worker, and she would have them on Thursdays in this hall. And I was at reception at that time, and I would be sitting and watching and craving to learn. And then one day I cornered her, and I begged her to let me be part of the programs. And she said, yes, you can join us. And that's when I learned the 7 sacred teachings. And as we were learning that, there was a part where she was talking about the medicine wheel. And I learned about the colors and how they represented the different emotions and the spirit and the physical part and the mental part of a human being. And also how they represented the different geographic backgrounds of the earth. And there were this, as you all know, there's black and yellow and red and white. And I was sitting there and asking, I said, Geraldine, where do I go? Because there's no brown in there. And she said, you belong to us. And that was the time when I felt that I'm home in Canada, because there was someone who was actually willing to accept me as who I am. And so since then, I've had this really strong connection. And I love Travis to the moon and back. I just absolutely adore him. And I'm so grateful to have made this connection and learned so much. And we're learning so much as a house and as individuals. Thank you so much, Elder Lorelei. Thank you so much, Al. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I'm just going to close the prayer with one more thank you and much gratitude to our elders who were with us today and continue to support us in our learning. Elder Al. Elder Greg, nice to meet you. I blow you a kiss even though we haven't gotten to know each other that well. Elder Joe, thank you so much for making time
to come and share your story with us today. I guess I could maybe be as informal as Auntie Esther. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Huda, Mimi, and the entire team that made this happen today, thank you so much. And I did ask Elder Lorelei if it would be appropriate for me to close the program, as I started it with reciting the prayer that she's asked us to recite when we're closing any learning circles. Thank you for sharing it with us. Elder Lorelei, I forgot to thank you. Thank you. Keep the circle ever growing. Keep the circle strong as we all become family and as time moves on. I wish everyone peace, and thank you very much for joining us today. Oh, I know. We're going to keep our distance, but we're going to stay if you'd like and enjoy a few snacks in the front room. We'll do it safely, though. Yes. Thank you again, everyone.